Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Podcast. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for making TeacherCast your home for professional development. There's, of course, several great ways that you can reach out and be a part of our show each and every week. We love it when you find us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave us a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. And, of course, we love it when you email us over at feedback@teachercast.net. And all of our archives are going to be found over at teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. And welcome to our show today. We have quite a treat for you. We have an amazing guest on the show today. See, recently we've been doing some series of shows with Microsoft Education, and on September 24th, we're going to be actually out in Seattle doing some behind-the-scenes video for something called Hack the Classroom, a 2-hour live event that you can register for by going to teachercast.net/hacktheclassroom. And it is a 2-hour live event featuring amazing keynotes, great interviews, and a live makerspace we're going to be covering. I'm going to be out there in Seattle doing all of this work with the amazing people that are out there. I hope you have a chance to join us by checking it out. Of course, you can go over to teachercast.net/hacktheclassroom for much more information about that. My guest today is one of the keynote speakers for that event. He has an amazing resume that we're going to dive into today. He was dubbed Mr. Creativity and a serial innovator by The Economist. He's also was a Harvard Business School professor, best-selling author, advisor to governments such as Finland and Abu Dhabi. He's worked with several top advisors, several great leaders, and my favorite, he was on the Colbert Report. I want to bring on today Mr. John Kao. John, how are you today? Welcome to TeacherCast.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here today. Today, we're going to talk all about Hack the Classroom and, of course, the message of innovation and innovating students and how we can get students to be innovative in the classroom and beyond. But I want to start off today by asking a really, really important question of you. When did you learn the piano?
So I started playing the piano when I was about 5 years old and did it in the very traditional way of Thompson method books and classical music. Obviously, that path kind of mutated over time.
I love the old red cover Thompson, the red and blue book Thompsons.
Indeed.
Absolutely. I started with those myself. And you've become quite a jazz pianist, haven't you?
Well, I enjoy playing jazz piano. I think I need to be somewhat humble about it. But, you know, the contrast between classical music and jazz is so provocative in terms of understanding the deep skills of innovation and creativity. So I've had a good excuse to continue my exploration of music in my later years, shall we say.
Now, talk to us a little bit about that, because that's kind of where I want to start things off here. We have traditional music, which is written down, and it is a chord progression. But then we also have jazz, which is improvised. Is there a similarity between, you know, progression versus improvise and the same thing as book smart and creativity innovation when it comes to the academic world?
Well, both kinds of music are music, except one kind is written down and it's practiced and it's performed, whereas the other kind of music is created in the moment in a way that has to sound good in order to pass an aesthetic test. And, you know, it would be very reassuring if we were in a world where we could be given the notes and the instructions about how to play them exactly. Then we could just kind of produce a high quality performance. But in the kind of 21st century turmoil-ridden world that we live in, we have to kind of learn how to make it up as we go along. We have to learn how to improvise. We have to learn how to create valuable things on the fly. And these are some of the important elements of 21st century skills that are very near and dear to my heart.
It seems like as we go through the 21st century, and clearly we're 16 years into this, innovation is more and more becoming something that we should be teaching at a younger and younger age. Do you feel that way? And if so, why are we looking to teach kindergartners the skill of innovation?
Well, I've said elsewhere that we are in the age of innovation, by which I mean that not just companies or Silicon Valley startups, but also countries are increasingly recognizing the importance of building innovation capability, of investing in the ability of their people to create new valuable solutions to whether they're business problems or social problems. China is an example of a country which has invested something on the order of $500 billion in what they call their national innovation agenda. And many other countries, you mentioned Finland earlier, and Singapore, are vying to be at the top of the heap in the innovation sweepstakes. So this whole idea that we need, as young people, to be able to create our own jobs, because the jobs aren't going to be handed to us like a piece of sheet music. We need to have the flexibility to define our pathway through an increasingly turbulent world. We have to use our innate creativity and amplify it by the acquisition of skills in areas like design and narrative and collaboration and so on, to be able to amplify our innate creativity to address the so-called wicked problems that affect our world these days. So innovation, to me, is one of the most important education agenda items once we kind of free it from our kind of cliches and prejudices about what it is, and instead focus on it as the ability to generate new ideas, to be able to develop them, and then to be able to realize value from them, whether it be in terms of a business value or, more importantly, I think, a social value.
When it comes to innovation, is it as much as being a creative entrepreneur or solopreneur, or is it teaching leadership skills? I know that you've got a background in starting businesses. Is it something that we should be teaching kids how to be leaders and lead groups of 5, 10, hundreds, or should we be teaching them as the solo piano player, just go out on your own and wherever the road leads you, that's where you might fall?
Well, it's interesting that you framed it that way, because I see it as being a blend. In some respects, an innovator, a creator, an entrepreneur, and I think those are three different flavors of a pathway in life, needs to be able to define their own path, needs to be confident, needs to have a personal vision of possibility that they want to actualize. But these days, the notion of the isolated genius in a room cooking something up no longer fits with the facts. And so the ability to collaborate with others, to build organizations, to lead teams in service of realizing that vision becomes extremely important. So you may need to have a singular perspective, but you also need to be able to work well with others.
What are some of the ways that we as educators can pick up those skills? I mean, most of the time right now you're seeing an educator in a boxed classroom being told what to do, and sometimes they don't have the opportunity to be innovative themselves, let alone teach others to be innovative.
Well, I think part of the issue is that up until now, there has been in the way of teaching material that would enable a teacher in the classroom to impart some of the innovation capacities that we've just mentioned as being so important. I mean, I've dedicated the last life to harvesting what I know about innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, the digital domain, into and to deconstruct innovation in a sense into teachable, learnable element deployed in schools, middle, high school, and undergraduate university type educational environments by teachers. And so we're just at the threshold now where high quality integrated practice-based learning materials are becoming available to teachers. And by the way, I don't see innovation as being a separate course over to the side when a curriculum has room. I see the kind of skills that innovation is about as being relevant range of education objectives. I mean, there's skills, narrative and telling and presentation skills and Socratic dialogue skills that are useful across the board and that we at EdgeMakers try to impart as very objective learning experience.
So John, a few years ago, you formed a company called EdgeMakers. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this came from my personal zeal to create a high-quality learning experience for innovation, broadly defined. and to make it available to lots and lots of young people through the medium of schools and also through self-directed learning offerings as well. Part of it is, I've been working in the innovation field, broadly defined, for some 30 years, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, and I've seen how it needs to be rescued from simply being a bumper sticker or cool stuff or wacky ideas, but actually needs to be seen as a set of disciplines, taking ideas, developing ideas, and harvesting the value from ideas. So in that short sentence, I've encompassed a number of different disciplines, ranging from creativity and ideation to design, narrative development, the management of change, collaboration, digital skills, and then finally entrepreneurial skills, which are about realizing the value from ideas in some practical form, whether it be a business form or a social form. So the other thing is, for me, innovation is a very practical, practice-based discipline. It's kind of like you can't teach it just by giving lectures and reading books. You actually have to do it. The metaphor that I like to use is, you don't learn a skill like being a Michelin star chef by reading a textbook. You have to get your hands dirty in the kitchen. You don't look at PowerPoint slides to acquire those finger skills. You have to get practice. So EdgeMakers is actually an effort. We're now in 4 countries, the US, Colombia, Brazil, and India, and considering expanding into other areas as well, which is about bringing, my 30 years plus or minus of innovation teaching, innovation advisory, and innovation facilitation into a very crystalline form so it can be made available to young people everywhere.
Now, I completely agree with what you're saying of the best way to learn these skills is by doing it. How do you suggest the average high school kid go about getting some of these skills? Is it about finding an internship or just starting their own business, physical, online, whatever? How do high school students get the advantages that they need these days?
We actually use the classroom as the crucible for the practical practice-based learning. So, for example, sustainability, which is, in a sense, the generational challenge of our age, and which we all should be, concerned about in one way or another, becomes the raw material for practicing all of the different skills I mentioned. So the curriculum that we've developed contains a number of different streams of practical application. So analyzing the flow of waste within your personal life, your classroom, your home, your community, becomes an exercise in ethnography, in reimagining new solutions, in applying design disciplines to modifying the way that waste, in a sense, becomes less wasteful. So, there are opportunities to do innovation projects right at your fingertips. And we exploit many, many opportunities to actually have the collaborative, the ideation, the design, the entrepreneurial processes unfold within the classroom.
So in that respect, are we looking at project-based learning or problem-based learning, or is this something completely different than those two things?
Well, it's project-based learning as applied to the learning framework that we've created. So EdgeMakers right now is a series of courses and also a large body of learning assets that can be deployed quite flexibly. And the learning opportunities in the sense of the project-based learning are distributed throughout the curriculum, at least in the canonical form that we've developed it thus far. So practice and theory and learning at a variety of levels informs our style of this pedagogical development.
Talking today to Mr. John Kao, a renowned author, strategist, entrepreneur, jazz piano player. And I want to get back to this real quick because my background is in music. My background is as a music teacher. What do you see, or what? I want to see the right question here, but talk to me about the importance of music education when it comes to being a creative student, and I would even say a creative human.
So music education to me is a very interesting subset of the whole challenge of reimagining education because, obviously from a policy perspective, music education is lumped in with the arts and it's considered to be quite dispensable when it comes to allocating scarce budget. At the same time, the advances in neuroscience that are occurring that enable dynamic brain imaging show quite conclusively that learning music in certain kinds of ways actually is a very good proxy for learning how to be creative, and that there are certain centers of the brain that light up when improvisation occurs, that also different parts of the brain light up when inhibition of creative flow occurs. And so we're not just talking about something that's artsy and elective. We're talking about a way of cultivating brain development, especially in earlier childhood, which is very significant. The National Association of Music Manufacturers, NAMM, which runs the biggest music trade show, had a program some years ago that says it all. The name of the program was Music Makes You Smart. And other countries like, I come back to China as an example, are investing in music education explicitly becoming intelligence and brain function. So I think we're missing out a lot by all of the cuts in music education. And the other thing is, I think there's innovation that can be applied to music education to make it even more kind of generically relevant. A lot of music education these days is still about, finding the golden student that's going to be able to play Beethoven piano sonatas, as opposed to understanding that music is a literacy, just like using words or using colors or shapes, that all young people should learn at some point in their life.
Do you have a favorite artist that you like to perform on the piano?
Well, I mean, I like to perform the Great American Songbook because, the folks in the 30s and 40s are, should be awarded the Nobel Prize for music in a way for having created musical tunes that have stood the test of time and have accommodated the improvisational genius of so many generations of jazz musicians. So, obviously the George Gershwins and the Cole Porters are in there, the Julie Steins, the Sammy Kahns, all of the legendary composers. And then it's up to us in 2016 to add something new to that music to extend the tradition further.
With the idea that, as you said, we're just taking what happened in the 30s, the Cole Porters, the Gershwins, guys that we all grew up with, that were not only composers, they were Broadway stars, they were improvisers, they did everything in all these different types of medium. Transpose that now to 2016, we've got people doing programming, coding, HTML, web design, you name it. Is this the same kind of boom that we saw back in the early days of Broadway, where so much is happening and you can really be what you want to be?
Well, it's an interesting observation. Creativity tends to clump in different historical eras and in different periods. Social media kind of got its start in the San Francisco Bay Area. The Great American Songbook really has its roots on Tin Pan Alley in New York City, which was literally where, until it became a musical hotspot, people would bang tin pans together to advertise the sale of certain kinds of products. So there are some interesting of apps being the songs of the 21st century and having that kind of popularity curve, with some of them enduring and others coming and going.
And the neat thing about those songs of the 20s and 30s, and I saw you mention this on one of your YouTube videos, you're sitting here improvising on the piano. You could go anywhere that you want. You're making up the melody, whatever's in your head, but you're still locked on to what we refer to as 12-bar blues. There's still some kind of a spine or a backbone that goes to that. And I think the same thing is happening these days with creativity. You can be an app developer or a web designer, but we're still on that path of, we do have rules that we want to keep into. How do you share that with students, where you say you could do anything that you want, just kind of stay within these boxes and within these rules?
Well, I think that creativity, to be worthwhile, always has to be a balancing act between structure and freedom, traditions and what is novel. And it's the 10 are apparently paradoxical opposites that actually leads to the good stuff. So jazz musicians are fond of saying, you have to learn the rules, and then you can throw the rules away. And there's a lot of truth to that, because the popular idea of jazz might be that people are sitting down at the piano and playing whatever they feel like playing, but nothing could be further from the truth. The jazz musician has to master their instrument, has to understand harmony, and the theory of jazz music, which is extremely complex, or can be extremely complex. And at the same time, at the moment of performance, has to forget all of that because it's the quality of the performance is about tapping into something very essential in terms of one's inner creativity and artistry. So I'm very much in favor of discipline and rules when it comes to all kinds of creative work. Every kind of creative work involves a medium, and a medium has friction. If you're a sculptor, it's pieces of marble. If you're a painter, it's canvas and pigments. If it's music, it's musical notes, which are basically sound frequencies that are produced by a musical instrument. So I think it's a very important message for young people, first of all, that they're all creative. And secondly, that they all have the opportunity to express their creativity, but that it is a blend of discipline as well as inspiration.
Should we be encouraging students to stay within the box, or should we be encouraging students just to break free? Or should we say, learn inside the box, then go out and do what you want?
Well, I think it kind of depends. I mean, I would say it's important for students to understand the dimensions of the box, the materials that the box is made out of, what happens if you stub your toe on the box and the consequences of it. But ultimately, as teachers, we want our students to fly. We want them to go where no one has gone before. We want them to explore. We want their innate creativity, which they've had since childhood, to not be extinguished by having to obey some industrial model of what the learning process is supposed to be about. But at the same time, we want to respect the fact that there are boxes. There is math, 2 + 2 = 4. There's physics. There are disciplines that are very valuable to learn.
What did you learn from Frank Zappa? So with all of that being said, John, tell us a little bit about your time with Frank Zappa. What did he tell you, and what kind of things did you learn after spending time with him?
Well, it was an amazing experience. I got to essentially be his apprentice for most of the summer. So everything that he did during that period, I did, whether it was going to the studio or going on the road and performing, or simply watching him assemble musical creations in his basement studio. So I learned a lot. I mean, he was one of the very first multiple media artists who saw what he produced as, being a piece of music that was also a film and also a stage show and many different embodiments, which in and of itself was quite interesting. But I think a couple of things to mention. One is I will always remember how supportive he was of the artist. I mean, he was not your stereotypic, crazy, erratic person. He was very professional, and he was very kind to me, which, in some respects he had no reason to be, and very nurturing of young people. The thing is that he was very courageous about combining different elements together to form new combinations. That he once said to me, anything sounds good as long as it's superimposed on top of a surfer backbeat. And there's some truth to that. And again, you've got that notion of the rules and the rhythm supporting the inspiration and the creativity on top of it.
If you look at that period of time when you were working with Frank, and it was 1969, this was after Woodstock, this was before the 70s, all of this musical innovation was happening both in the studio. This is, again, post-Beatles, but also post the time when Bob Dylan plugged in and all that mess was going on. Is there any similarity between that era of abundance of sound and where we are today with an abundance of information, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Pokemon Go? Everything is hitting the students all at the same time, and they're still trying to figure out how to rise above and be that next Frank Zappa, or you name the star that came out of the 70s that made themselves known within all of that sound process that was going on?
Well, I think those were simpler days, and the media that conveyed the creativity were much more defined. I think what's noteworthy about today is, as you put it, it's an avalanche of information, and so the consumption of media works differently. You know, there's a lot more scanning and a lot more curating on the fly and picking and choosing and having flows of information, rivers of information go by where you just kind of pick an element or two out, you know, on your Twitter feed or on your Instagram feed, because you can't absorb it all. I think also there's much more of the onus on the end user to link together and connect the dots, in a sense, of all of the different elements and all of the different media types. And in the old days, things were a lot more pure. So I think the density of information requires a number of different kinds of skills, but it also raises issues about, you know, how young people validate the information they get through digital media. I mean, how do they know whether something is true or false? How do they know how to certify or self-certify that something is believable? And, you know, in the present era, that is a key skill of being a functional citizen in civil society.
What kinds of things are you currently working on when it's, you know, you and a leader of a country, and you're trying to either advise them on innovation, creativity, or assist them in moving a country, a continent into innovation? What are those meetings like? What are those conversations like? Are people scared of innovation? Are they embracing it but not knowing how? What kinds of things do you advise during those moments?
I think, well, it's all different. I mean, people come to those conversations, leaders come to those conversations with different personal styles, different understandings, different levels of sophistication, different agendas. So my job is to be a good diagnostician and understand both at an individual level and also in terms of the constituencies they represent, what's really on their mind, and then to relate it to my, at this point, fairly fleshed out mental model of how all the different pieces, what all the different pieces are to begin with, but then how they all fit together. And it's like being a doctor. You know, a patient comes in and they have symptoms and they present in a certain way, and then you have to figure out what's going on, and you create a hypothesis, which we would call a diagnosis, and is not entirely accurate right off the bat. And then you iterate and you try something, and hopefully it works. You make a prescription, and hopefully you have a healthier and happier patient, customer.
You know, I love the idea of acting in that doctor role where you're listening to what's going on and then trying to make adjustments. We recently had something being introduced into our society, mentioned it a little bit of time ago, called Pokemon Go. This is a combination of, I think I'm saying this right, augmented reality and virtual reality. Maybe you can help us define those two, but are these things... should we be using these things in the classroom? Should we be bringing in this whole extra world or all these extra gadgets into our educational system? And if so, why or why not?
Well, I'm not necessarily in favor of bringing in shiny new gadgets and technology just because they're new. I think you always have to think about what's the learning experience. I do think that virtual reality, which is the complete substitution of your reality around you for a synthesized reality, and augmented reality, which is the superimposition of a virtual layer on a perceived real environment around you, are going to role in education. As a matter of fact, I'm involved in a pretty significant set of experiments right now around using VR as a medium for creating experiences that are about developing intelligence and judgment and a number of the different character strengths that we would agree are within the 21st century skills spectrum. But I think it's very early days. So if I were a teacher, I would both be interested but I remain agnostic until the technology has proven itself out. At the same time, I would also say that young people are exposed to a digitally rich environment schools can hope to replicate. And so maintaining student engagement, I think, is very much about offering certain kinds of digital experiences that are going to maintain the level of or stimulate the level of engagement that in turn will activate the in-class learning experience.
How far down the road do you think we are before AR, VR is part of the norm? I mean, I see it a lot right now, but as you said, we're still a ways from it. Is this 5 years, 15 years?
Oh, I think it's not the next few years for sure. I think we're still in a very early experimentation stage. And, there are questions about where the money comes and, what kind of a hardware setup is required to have these experiences. I mean, what I've been doing is mostly focusing on what the learning experience is and what the pedagogical layer is that will enable these experiences to be real in a school context. And I think all of those kind of standards have yet to be worked out and ratified so that it becomes, as you say, the norm. So I think this is really sort of a paradigm shift. I don't see it as being the next, but I don't see it being, 15 years either. I mean, I think there are a lot of schools that already have an appetite for adopting some of this technology. Things are quite advanced in this area in the UK and other countries. So it's just a matter of time. It's an inevitability, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. I know working in a K-12 situation right now, there are kids all over the place that are learning about this, using this. I see teachers trying to put it in their classrooms. I mean, AR, VR kind of does come from the QR code family. I see QR codes popping all up where we're trying to find extra ways to stimulate us, to pop something up, to give us an extra dimension to our classrooms here. John, talk to us a little bit about the Hack the Classroom event next week. What can we be excited about for it, and what are you going to be sharing with us at that event?
Well, I think it's a meeting of the minds. I think the organizers have put together a really terrific roster of people. I think that the event is very well conceived and curated, and so it should be a window on a number of different forward-thinking areas about where education is going. What I'm going to be doing is talking a fair amount about my perception of what kind of innovation is in education as an institution. So innovating education and then educating for innovation, which obviously is a big theme of my own work. But all of that would be about looking at the future of education, where I think it's going, where I think it needs to go, and what some of those driving forces will be. There will be a wide range of voices. So it should be a pretty terrific event. I credit Mike. The more I've looked into this too, I mean, Microsoft is very committed to making a bridge between advanced technology and concepts around the usage. So I'm personally interested to see how that looks in an event setting.
And of course, if you're out there interested in learning more about Hack the Classroom, you can go to teachercast.net/hacktheclassroom. It's going to be happening live on September 24th, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock a.m. till 10 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. A fantastic lineup of speakers and events going on. And TeacherCast himself, Jeff Bradbury, I'm going to be out there doing all the behind-the-scenes stuff. So we'll be doing Facebook Live and tweets and Snapchatting, and we're going to be doing all the social media out there. We are looking forward to that. John, I want to say thank you so much for your time for coming on today. But before I let you go, I do have one very, very difficult question for you, if you don't mind taking one more from us here. John, if you could do a piano duet with anybody, alive or dead, who would it be and why?
There's so many choices. I think I would someone like Eric Satie, who in the simplicity of his music made some of the most profound statements that musicians have ever made. And then I would try to emulate that level of simplicity. It's kind of the old statement of simplicity is the ultimate form of elegance. So I've always been fascinated by his music because he could cram so much meaning into so few notes. I mean, he's not a jazz musician, but
was it Satie was the one that made
that wasn't part of the question.
That's okay. Satie was the one that did the gymnopedies. I can never say that word right.
Right, gymnopedie, and
yes.
I mean, his music is like thoughts unfolding.
Very, very cool. John, thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. And again, if you're out there, check out Hack the Classroom over at teachercast.net/hackthe-classroom. You can find more information about John by going to johnkao.com. That's JOHNKAO.com. And one last time, John, tell us a little bit about what we can learn or how we can reach out to you at EdgeMakers.
Oh, yeah. So EdgeMakers has a URL as well, and it's www.edgemakers.com. So that's EdgeMakers, MAKERS, all one word, .com. And there's plenty of information on there. There's downloadable content. There's samples. There's video demonstrations. There's blog posts from our global community of young people. And there's ample opportunity information as to how to contact us. So thank you for reminding me to mention that, because we welcome interest from all of our colleagues in terms of what we're doing and your input.
Well, my friends, that wraps up this episode of the TeacherCast podcast. I want to thank again my friend John Kao. He's going to be speaking at the Microsoft in Education Hack the Classroom event live on September 24th from 8 to 10 p.m. Pacific time. I'll be there. I hope to see you there. There's, of course, several great ways to reach out to TeacherCast and be a part of our broadcast each and every week. We love it when you find us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave us a voicemail over at teachercast.net/voicemail. Email us at feedback@teachercast.net. And, of course, you can always subscribe to us on audio and video over at teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. Of course, this is a big reminder that our Tech Educator podcast, our live broadcast, has moved, and we are now going to be found on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. only on teachercast.tv. Of course, we hope that you can join us every Tuesday for the Tech Educator podcast. On behalf of everybody here on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.